Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today for Curious People Wanted. I'm Dr. Daryn Reyman-Lock, curator here at the Barnum Museum in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So as you all get to know me, you'll find I'm a bit of an architecture nerd, and as I was trained as an archaeologist, I'm always curious in objects small and large. But what interests me most is not always the object itself, but the people who had hands in making that item. This also applies to our historic building. Originally known as the Barnum Institute for Science and History, our 1893 building has ornately sculpted terracotta friezes. While these are interesting because of their subject matter and portrayal of individuals, cultural and ethnic groups, and important phases of American history, they are interesting to me because they were made by one of the only terracotta sculptors who actually signed his work. His name was Henry Francis Plasschaert, and he sort of was a rock star of the 19th century terracotta world. Henry Plasschaert was born in Ghent, Belgium on January 30th, 1861. There isn't much known about his early life, although it is clear that he was artistically trained in Europe. He attended two schools in Belgium, the Academy of Brussels and the Academy in Ghent, before going to Paris to study at the Atelier Pepin. According to his passport records, Plasschaert was 5'7", with a ruddy complexion, high forehead, and a Roman nose with blue eyes and dark brown hair. On July 16, 1881, Henri boarded a ship in Antwerp bound for New York City. He arrived in America 2 weeks later with the intention of going to Illinois. While documentary evidence is pretty sketchy, it seems Henri lived in Chicago and quickly found a job with Northwestern Terracotta Company, a major producer of decorative terracotta trimming used in construction. This company worked with big-name architects like Frank Lloyd Wright, Louis Sullivan, Daniel Barnum, and Albert Kahn, and provided materials for some of Chicago's most famous landmarks, including the Wrigley Building and the Civic or Lyric Opera House. During the 1880s and 1890s, Northwestern Terracotta also actively recruited European craftsmen to work as sculptors in the modeling shop. So it is no wonder why Henri decided to head to Chicago. He likely was recruited specifically by that company. While in Chicago, Plasschaert met Estelle Thomange, a French immigrant, and the two married in 1884. By mid-1885, the couple decided to move to Boston, where they settled for the next 6 or 7 years. While there, they had their 3 children, Pelagie, named for Henri's mother, Henrietta, and Camille, who became quite well known as a violinist herself. During his time in Massachusetts, Henri became a naturalized citizen on October 16, 1888, and around that same time began working with the Boston Terracotta Company. It is unclear whether he was directly employed by the company or worked on commission. The Boston Terracotta Company provided materials for a huge number of buildings in New York City, but also throughout New England, parts of the Midwest, and also Canada. During his time in Boston, he worked on the German-American Shooting Society Clubhouse in New York City, the Bemis House in Buffalo, New York, and a bas-relief for the old Washington County Courthouse in West Bend, Wisconsin, among other commissions. In 1882, the Plasschaert family left Boston and moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where Henri found work in the Pennsylvania Museum's School of Industrial Art. The school was incorporated in 1876 with the express intent to provide instruction in design as it applied specifically to manufacturing. Many professors not only taught students, but also worked independently with manufacturing companies, often bringing a team of students with them to complete large projects. Mr. Edmund Stewartson, the School of Industrial Arts professor of sculpture, had drowned during the summer, and Henri Plasschaert was hired as his replacement. Already of some renown, Henri continued to build on his reputation and taught classes on modeling, but soon was appointed head of the decorative sculpture department. During his tenure, Henri worked with large firms like Stevens, Armstrong, and Conkling Terracotta Company, where he executed models for friezes on a number of buildings, as well as other notable artists like Edward Main, a Belgian-American sculptor and woodcarver with whom he worked on the quadrangle dormitory gargoyles and grotesques at the University of Pennsylvania. It was during his time as a professor of sculpture that Henri modeled and executed the frieze work for many buildings in Philadelphia, including the Wistar Institute of Anatomy and Biology, Horticultural Hall, and the T-Square Club. This last building is particularly important, as the club itself was important in professionalizing American architecture. The club also was active in the School of Industrial Arts. As a member of the society, Henry associated, mingled, and collaborated with notable architects and artisans. I guess most importantly for us at the Barnum, it was during Plasschaert's teaching tenure at the School of Industrial Arts that he created the frieze work for our building here in Bridgeport. Unfortunately, the School of Industrial Art faced financial hardship when state funding fell short. It is unclear whether the shortage of funding was ultimately the reason, but Henry resigned his post at the school in 1897. The Plasschaert family remained in Philadelphia, however, and Henry continued to work as a modeler and sculptor, as an independent artist, and in conjunction with other sculptural firms. He continued to be prolific and work on numerous buildings like the Colonial Theater in Hagerstown, Maryland, built in 1914. Henry retired sometime in the 1930s, but continued to live in Philadelphia. His wife, Estelle, passed in 1935, and he followed 5 years later on December 12, 1940. Today, with our extraordinary team of historic preservation experts and artisans, the magnificent decorative details that Henry designed and crafted for the Barnum Institute of Science and History will be skillfully and lovingly restored to reflect their original excellence and perfection. Thanks for joining me today for Curious People Wanted. Make sure to keep joining me as we discover Barnum together by subscribing to our channel, and remember to stay curious.